Jafffa Adventures, Terry King here. Welcome to the channel. The Jafffa crew and I have got a big trip coming up. We're going to cross the Simpson Desert on our motorbikes, and the girls are going to be steering the cars. Today's video is all about the preparation work that I'm going to do to this bike to get it ready for the trip. Now, as you could see from that list in the opening, I've got a whole host of things that I need to do on this bike. And the first thing that I'm going to tackle on this bike is change the battery out of it, because the battery I've got in it at the moment is pretty sad. And the battery that I'm going to use is this little sucker, an iTech World lithium battery. You guys may have seen my videos on the lithium battery inside of the 200 series cruiser. I really do rate that battery. It's been going for 3 years now, and those are trouble-free 3 years. So I thought, what the heck? I'm replacing a battery in this bike pretty much every 12 months, the old lead acid ones. So let me give a lithium a crack and see whether I can get a little bit more longevity out of that. Pretty easy to pull the seats off these guys. There's only 2 bolts holding them on. And there's what I'm after. There's the lead acid battery I'm going to pull out. There she is. Have a look at the difference in size between those 2 batteries. There's the original lead acid, and there's the lithium. And the lithium battery is actually higher cold cracking amps than this little sucker. What iTech do give you is they give you these little pads to build out the battery. And when you do that, they're an identical size. So that's cool. That'll fit in the bike. No dramas with that little pad. Just like that, battery spacer fitted. Now we get our lithium battery with our little packer. Look at that. Easy peasy. That's our positive terminal. Negative terminal. Done. Well, that was a pretty bloody simple swap out. While I was in here, I decided to pull off the little fuse panel and just clean those contacts up a little bit and check each one of these fuses. Hit them with a bit of contact cleaner. All right, I got my multimeter here. I'll just put it on resistance, and I'll put it on the squealer, and I'll test each one of these fuses. That one's good. That one's good. While I'm here, I might as well test the voltage of this iTech battery. It should be 13 or close to it. It's brand spankers. 13.16. Excellent. Okay, let me see how this thing turns over for starters. Starters. Man, what a difference. All right, let's see what voltage we got going in. 13.05 at idle. Well, after running that voltmeter on the battery, I had a look at the manual, and the specifications said that that charging system should be running between 14 and 15 volts. So I thought there might be something a little bit suspicious there. So I dropped the old battery back in, which was sitting at 12.3 volts, started it up, and it stayed at 12.3. So I've got a charging issue on this bike somewhere. All right, here's the charging system checks. So first of all, check the fuse. I've done that. That's good. Check the battery. It's a brand spanner, so that's all good. Check each coupler and wire connection. I haven't done that yet, but I will. Check the charge voltage. That is no good. Check the AC magneto, and then replace, and if that's no good, replace the rectifier. And there's a procedure here for checking the AC magneto. Unfortunately for me to do that, I've got to pull the tank off. So that's where I'm going to next. So you got this big ass tank, and it's got 2 puny little 8mm bolts holding it on. Well, after a little bit of diagnostics, which basically involved testing the resistance at these 2 plugs, I have found out that my stator, located behind this cover, is dead. And a stator is basically an alternator for a battery. It's the item that uses a moving magnetic field to create the electricity in the charge for the bike. So I've got to pull this cover off, and I've got to change that stator out. To do that, the first thing I've got to do is drain the oil out of the bike. All right, the oil drain plug on these WRs is right there. I'll undo the filler plug so it doesn't gloop. Now I'll take this sucker off and try not to drop it into the drip tray. Sweet. That seems to be running pretty slow, so let me take the dipstick out and let a little bit of air in that way. Mucho better. Yamaha couldn't have extended that plug by another 2 or 3 millimeters just to clear this chassis, because when it drains, it runs in behind this weld and gets soaked inside of the chassis and then dribbles out here. I guess that's the difference between engineers and mechanics. That's a weird kind of a phenomenon. A couple of these drops, if you watch them, they're actually not hitting the frame, they're actually flicking out. There's no wind to be blowing them. It's almost like, I don't know, like a surface tension or a static electricity or something. It's really weird. I've never been more fascinated with an oil change. Now over on this side of the bike, behind this cover, is the oil filter. And my recollection of this is that all 3 of these bolts are different lengths. So you got to make sure you get the right bolt in the right hole. And my recollection was correct. There's just an O-ring here that seals it, and a couple of O-rings here where there's some oil galleries. And there's our oil filter. Now I'll sop up the oil out of there as best I can. Clean off that mating face. Clean off the mating face on the cap. There's our new oil filter. Hello, little guy. Got a bit of oil on that mating surface and a little bit on that mating surface. Now you can't put this on backwards because there's a blank there. Won't fit. Has to go that way. Hit that with a pile of brake cleaner so it's nice and cleaned off, so if I've got a leak later on down the trap, I can see it and it's not masked by the oil that I've already spilt when I was doing the change. Now I'm back over the other side of the bike again, and I'll put this drain plug back in. There, that's pretty nice and clean. I've got to leave this crankcase empty, but I do not want to forget to put oil in that when I'm finished. So I'm putting this little yellow reminder tag here to tell me, don't forget to fill me. It's pretty sad when you get to my age and you got to put these little reminders down for yourself. Got to accept my limitations and compensate. Awesome. It's a few days later. Mr. Ypres has come through and delivered me my new stator. So I'm now going to pull this cover off and replace that stator, and hopefully that's going to solve my charging issues. The first thing I need to do is take this shifter off. And the reason I need to do that is it's going to interfere with this cover here. I might just mark that spline so that I know where I took it off so I can put it back on the exact same spot. Excellent. Now the next thing I've got to do is pull off this little breather. Now I pull the starter cover off. So I guess that's just an intermediate gear. There's the starter gear there. Then you got this thing, and then you've got the gears here in the actual engine itself. So I guess the starter gear engages this guy, spins him around, and he turns him. Cool. Okay, now I pull the rest of these bolts off. And they're not all the same length. So that one's the shortest one, and that guy there is the longest one. So I'll just need to remember that, which I won't. So I'll mark them. Put an L on for that one, put an S for that one. Long and short for the geniuses out there. Look at that. I actually had a rag that was pretty close to being right in the right spot. There's what we're chasing right there, Mr. Stator. All right, now a couple of precautionary things before I rip this apart. There's my gasket that I got from Yamaha. There's the part number. I just want to make sure that that's going to fit. So that's got a little dog leg there, which is there. That runs around there. We've got a little flat square thing, which is that. And another tab there. Yep, that's the right gasket. So I can pull that gasket off. It feels like it's got a bit of, it's like a steel reinforced gasket. Next I'll check out the stator. Now I've already checked out these two plugs which match on the bike. So if I'm looking at this, it's got a little steel tab there. That's got that there. There are two plugs here, two here, big one here, big one there. That all looks good. Same diameter. That's our magnetic pickup. That looks about the same. And that's the little rubber plug that goes right there. So I'm going to call that a win in terms of a matchup. Not going to call it a win in terms of a solution yet. Now there's two Torx bits holding that on. And those are T25s. And they're not held in there very tightly either. I'm looking at those two torque bolts. They're exactly the same. Now, let's get this magnetic pickup off. That is held in place with two 5mm Allen head screws. And those two are identical lengths as well, so you can't mix them up. Now, I'd imagine this plug just levers out. Yes. We got a couple of pieces here. So we got the magnetic pickup, which is underneath, and then we've got this little, must be a wire guard, which sits over top. Now the wire is fed between these two posts and goes directly in there. So while that's all still fresh in my head, we'll get the new one straight away. That gets fed around the post like that. Then our magnetic pickup goes on those two posts. And then this wire protector. Need hands of a 12-year-old for this. It's just running these Allen bolts down to hold it all in place. Now let's bolt this stator in place. Okay, everything's sitting in place. Now the last thing I need to deal with is this little rubber plug which sits in there. But it looks like we've got some silicone on there. So I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to put a little bit of silicone on there myself as well. Now I put a rag in there so that I don't get crap sprayed everywhere. I've got a teeny tiny wire brush on my die grinder. I got it rotating so it's spinning all the shit out that way, not in towards the cover. Now I got everything cleaned up. I'll run these bolts down tight now. Now this little half moon sucker. I can see that giving me a little bit of grief because it sits a little bit proud of the mating face here, and the gasket has to sit over top of it. Small amount on that surface, and then a small amount on the surface of the rubber plug itself. Now I will put a little small amount of sealant just on either side of that half moon because it is sitting a little bit proud of that gasket. I'll put a little bit of sealant on the top of that half moon where the gasket's going to sit up against it flush, like so. Okay, I think we're ready to take that over to the bike now and fit her up. Okay, we'll put our gasket in place. There's a little O-ring there that starter cover mates up against. I'll just put a little bit of oil on there to help facilitate assembly. Okie dokie, here we go. And then we've got locating dowels for the case itself. So how hard could this be, right? Short one goes there, and the long one goes here. And all the rest are the same size. Okay, I have the starter cover in place. I've obviously got this cover completely put on. Now, I'll put the shifter back on, I'll top it up with oil, and before I route these plugs, I'll just plug them straight in, fire the bike up, and see whether we've got some charging happening. Now, I know the bike takes about 1.2 liters. So I'm going to actually measure that exact amount out, and then I'll dip it once I get the thing started, because you've got to actually dip it in the upright position. Okay, it's the following morning, and it's mercifully cool in the shed here. It's probably only about 20 degrees. Got my side cover on. All the oil's cleaned off, so I'll be able to tell whether we got a leak there. I've topped up the oil with 1.2 liters. I've zip tied our cable in place. These are the two plugs for the stator. They're now plugged in. Now I'm just going to hop on the bike and kick it over without turning the ignition on, just to make sure that all the gears are meshing properly and that I haven't done something wrong behind that side cover where I might have one metal component contacting another in a bad way. good. No metal-to-metal contact there. Now I'm gonna set this fuel tank on just temporarily so that I can kick this thing in the guts and see whether our charge issue has been sorted out. You gonna leak on me without that clamp on there? It doesn't look like it. All right, moment of truth. Let's see whether this thing's charging. Well, that isn't what I wanted to see. I was looking for between 14 and 15 volts. So I thought to myself, you've got a brand new lithium battery in there. Maybe the stator is reading that battery is full and just doesn't need to be charging it. So I'll put my old battery back in the bike, fire it up, and I'll see whether that changes the charging conditions at all. Fingers crossed, because if that doesn't work, I don't know where to go to next. All right, my old battery has got 12.89 volts in it. Let's kick this bike in the guts. Whew, well, that's good to see. Obviously that lithium battery was completely topped up and the charging system was saying, hey, you don't need any more. We'll swap the lithium back in, call the charging system sorted, move on to the next thing. Now, what was that next thing? Oh yeah, check the list. Now it's time to share in the wonderful experience of crossing something off the list. Did you feel that endorphin hit? You missed it? Let's try it again. Oh yeah, baby. Now I've got no indicators. One of the reasons is because that one's melted off because of the tailpipe. But the second reason is because the flasher can on these things just gets blasted to pieces with all of the bumps and jumps and everything that you're doing. So I don't know how many flasher cans I've replaced on this thing, but a crap load. Anyway, it's behind there. I'm going to dig that out and replace him. And that's what this little flasher relay looks like. And it's got such tiny little wires in it and little bits and pieces that they just get smashed to bits and stop working. Not that I'm going to be using the indicators out in the middle of the Simo, but anyway. Now to bleed the brakes. And that's what I'm chasing right there, that brake bleeder screw. Okay, got a little bit of hose. We'll pop it on the bleeder. I got a little container to catch the brake fluid in. Now there's two separate reservoirs for the front and the rear brakes. And this one here is for the rear brakes. And let's bleed away. So I'm pushing the brake pedal down. Letting her back up. Pushing the brake pedal down. Letting her back up. That's it, she's quite full. Now it's time to change the headlight because the one in there is burnt out at the moment. And I'm going to share with you something that I would not recommend that you do. Okay, there's our headlight we're going to pull out. See that little sucker? That is an LED bulb. And it cannot take the flogging that a motocross bike gives it. I would not use LED bulbs, especially these cheap Chinese jobos off of eBay. So I'm going to put the original H4 back in. All right, let's fire them up, see what we got. Sweet. Now this little park light guy, he's not working. See if I got a spare one of him. I could not get that little running light bulb to work. I've cleaned all the connectors in there. I've cleaned all the contacts, and I just cannot get that sucker to work. So I'm going to raise the white flag. You win, Mr. Bulb. Next, I'm going to the back of the bike and going to replace this manculated indicator. Looks like bloody Terminator 2 action happening there. All right, new indicators bolted in place. Now I just need to solder it up like so, and we're good to go. Put a little bit of heat shrink on these. That's an example of one of the instances when you try and cut corners and it bites your ass. I used a torch on that to speed things along a little bit, and I should have used a soldering iron, because if I had to use a soldering iron, that heat shrink wouldn't have shrunk up on me. Now before I put this brake light in and bolt everything back up again, I'm going to check that indicator works. Awesome! Goodbye T2, it was nice knowing ya. Alright, this one, set up GoPro mounts on bike and helmet. Got the helmet GoPro mount all set up. I like it sitting out here better than on the side or even the top, because you get this brim of the helmet or the side of the helmet when it's sitting over there. I've got an internal mic all set up. I got that idea off of Scott from Man Bike Swag, so thank you for that, Scott. I got a GoPro mount on the bar here, and to be honest, for the rest of the bike, I just use a little bit of duct tape or electrical tape. So for example, the last time I was out in the desert, I actually duct taped the GoPro to my boot, and that was on the sequence where I hit that dingo out near Perny Bore. Endorphin release time. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna move on to change coolant. Got myself some brand new coolant here, so I'll drain the old stuff out of the bike and top it up with the new stuff. I'm not gonna do a flush on this because I do change the coolant quite regularly on this bike. Okay, this little puppy here is our coolant drain plug. And talk about easy to get to. That's bloody awesome. And what do you know, I spilled some. How about that? That never happens. And that is my coolant flush. Put my little drain plug back in. Tighten him down all nice like. Now I'll top the radiators up completely. And I will put a little bit of coolant in the overflow bottle as well. Now I'll put the tank back on, run the motor, get it hot, and then check it once it cools down. Not too dissimilar from a car, really. Time for that endorphin hit. Oh yeah, baby. Plumbing in the rear tank. Let's have a look at what I'm talking about there. This 5-liter tank here is not plumbed in at the moment, it's just sitting there. So basically what I've got to do is get a fuel line from here, over to here, and tee it into the main fuel line. I've got an on-off valve. I've got a T, I just need some 5/16 fuel line. Shops are closed today, so I'm not going to be able to do that, but it's a really simple job, and I'm not even going to bother filming that one. This item here, install new chain and sprocket. Got a brand new chain, I've got a brand new front sprocket, and I've got a brand new rear sprocket. Just to compare the sprocket on my bike compared to the brand new ones, you can see how it's worn. The sprocket's actually a little bit more pointy, and the very tips of those sprockets are pulled a little bit over towards the front of the bike. So, new sprocket is in order, and I'm not one for just changing one sprocket, so I will do my rear sprocket as well, and I'll do my chain as well. Now we're 3 months out from the desert trip, so I'm going to run this old gear for probably a couple of more months before I swap this new gear on, because I want the brand new stuff on when I hit the desert sands. I will install this kit about a month out, because one thing about brand new chains is they stretch, and they stretch quite a bit for the new part of their life. So I'd like to get that stretch out of the chain before I actually hit the desert. Fitting brand new front and rear tires and tubes. Again, I'm not going to do that until just before we leave. I want to hit the desert with brand spanking new knobbies. Set the droop height. I've actually checked that, and it's pretty good. And what that is the droop that the bike sits at when it's just sitting here idle. And if I lift the bike up, it's actually got no droop whatsoever. But it's right on the very limit of drooping, which is what I'd like to see. So we'll call that one a win. Endorphin time again. Oh, baby. The last item on my list here is Get Match Fit. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm pretty lucky in that I've done the desert crossing 2 times on my motorbike so far, so I got a little bit of an idea of what I'm in store for. And I know which parts of my body were killing me when I was out there the last time. And the first thing for me are my hands, right here and right here, because when I'm riding, I'm standing up and I tend to grip quite hard on the handlebars. Probably because I'm scared shitless when I'm riding and I'm hanging on for dear life. So what I do every evening is I've just got these little babies here, And I just sit here and I squeeze away for hours and hours and hours, just trying to build a little bit of fitness up on those arms. Of course, the other thing that I do when I'm out riding is I try and consciously remember to just loosen my grip, because you really, you know, the handlebars should just basically be flopping in your hands. You shouldn't actually have to grip them so that your arms are getting sore. But anyway, that's one of the challenges that I've got. But far and away, the biggest thing is fitness level. We'll be on the bikes from probably 8 or 9 in the morning until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And 99.9% of the time, you're standing up on the pegs. We're out there to have a good time. We're out there to have fun. It's a giant sandbox and we're out there to play in the sandbox. I do not want to be in a position where I'm riding to survive. I want to ride to have fun. And because of that, I need to be a lot more fit than I am at the moment. So what am I doing over the next 3 months or so to get myself in shape, ready for this trip? I'm running 2 to 3 days per week, and at the moment I'm running 8 kilometers. I'd like to get that up to a consistent 3 days a week and 10 kilometers. My pace is pretty slow, well over a 7-minute kilometer, but that running will obviously help with my cardiovascular fitness. My son and I are playing squash once a week, and that's a good intense hour of some serious running. It's almost like interval training in some respects. So that'll be really good to take heart rate up to peak levels and then drop back down and then back up to peak levels, just like you do in interval training. Another thing I'm doing is rowing about twice a week as well. And I put an hour in on the rower, and that's just to help with the upper body strength. The next thing I'm trying to do is just eat a lot better. I eat too much and I like beers too much. And I've got to pull a little bit of weight off just to help me out there in the desert. That one is probably the hardest one for me, actually. And the last and most important thing about getting match fit is saddle time. Nothing can replace saddle time. So having said that, I'm going to throw my gear on, head out in the bush behind the house, and we'll go for a ride together. How's that sound? I thought you might find it interesting what kit I wear when I go out for a ride. I've got some riding pants on. They're just a Velcro type pant that you often see push bike riders use. Helps when you're standing up and sitting down, something nice and stretchy. Then I've got shin protectors and knee protectors, and they've just got 3 straps that sort of clip on and hold them in place. Next comes my riding pants, and these are in pretty rough shape. I'm gonna have to shout myself a new pair before we go to the desert. These things have got holes in them and they've been around for a very long time. Next up are my boots. These are a TCX brand. I'm not a super brand type individual. I'm not a good enough rider to really worry about brands. I just need something that's comfortable and that will provide me with some protection. The socks that I'm wearing, they're just a regular pair of work socks. Next up is my armor. This stuff will hopefully protect my limbs a little bit should I come off the bike, particularly your elbows and chest area, for example. And this armor also has a kidney belt built in, which is awesome. I've then got a dry rider jacket, which goes over top, but in that jacket, I've got a water bladder. This water bladder holds about 2 liters. And that just helps keep me hydrated on the trails because I sweat hard. I'm sweating right now just putting this gear on. Maybe it's because I'm shitting my pants too. Nothing wrong with a good healthy dose of fear. Keeps you on your toes. That water hose just hangs down there. Now I got a set of goggles, a pair of gloves, and a helmet. And you hear that noise? That's rain pounding down, of course. There's a little bloody cloud sitting over top of the house at the moment. So there's my helmet setup, and there's the GoPro setup. So it's basically held on with this little bracketry here, and it's upside down and around. A microphone runs into the helmet itself to try and keep a little bit of the wind noise down. I do have the side mount on the helmet for a GoPro as well. Well, I'm only a couple hundred meters into the ride, and I've already had a stack I didn't have the GoPro on. I was coming off the road into the bush. I hit a slimy patch, and the front tire just went zoink and skid out in front of me. Unbelievable. Let's hope that's the last one for today. Geez, these tracks are a lot more washed out than the last time I was on them. All that bloody rain we had.
It's just gibbers everywhere now. Of course, now I got to get up this bloody rut that I'm going down. That'll be fun and games. That little rain shower has just made these tracks so greasy now. There's a river running down the center of the track. Whew. Well, that had to be one of the sloppiest rides that I've ever done. I need some serious saddle time to get ready for the desert. What a wake-up call. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Keep the shiny side up, unlike I did today, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye now.